all those images together. Now that I have this 360-degree panorama, I need to turn it into that appropriate file structure. To do that, I'm going to use a tool called Pano2VR. Now, this is not the only way that you can do this. Just know that within the documentation for DPS, this particular tool is recommended. In order to use the output for commercial purposes, you will need to purchase a license. While this copy is running in trial mode, the actual panorama that I built was built with a licensed copy, so it doesn't have a watermark. In order to use this tool for our purposes, we need to take that TIFF file that I built before and then put it into this panorama area. In the assets folder, it's called beachpano.tiff. And we'll drag it right here. Having loaded it, we can then adjust some parameters. I need to understand what the viewing area is. Pano2VR is pretty smart in that it can read out exactly what type of a panorama this is. It knows, for instance, that this is a cylindrical panorama and that my expectation is to go all the way around a cylinder and not to look up and down. Let's look at our parameters here because we want to take some of this information over to DPS. You can see that out of the box, it assumes that we can go all the way to the sky and all the way to the floor. We also have the built-in image limitations that are indicated here. I can only go up 19 degrees and down 19 degrees, and so what I'd like to do is to set my limits to 19 degrees up and 19 degrees down. If you've built a panorama with a wide-angle lens, then you've probably got a much larger field of view up and down. The tool will detect the upper and lower limits of your image. Remember those numbers because you'll need them later on in DPS. You can also set other limits. At the moment, this particular viewing pane shows me only minus 12.8 degrees and 12.8 degrees left and right of center. I want to set my starting point to be looking right down the pier. So having moved my image around, I want to set this as my starting point today. Click the Set button to apply my default view. Having done that, I'll say OK. Yes, I'd like to save my current view as the default view for the panorama. Next, I need to tell it what I want to manufacture with the tool. To do that, I'll pick Convert Input. The resultant that we want is going to be a JPEG file, so we'll say our format's going to be JPEG. Secondly, we need to have a cube faces output. Having made these choices, I can now produce the 6 images that I need for my DPS panorama. These images that I've made will now fit into the panorama overlay. We'll see how to actually apply them to the overlay in another movie. Remember that unless you register your copy of Pano2VR, your images will have a watermark. While Pano2VR is an effective tool for building these types of overlays, it's not the only tool that's available. You may have additional tools at your disposal. Go ahead and use them so long as it can produce the inside faces of a cube. That's what DPS needs in order to make its panorama overlay. We'll see how to take that panorama overlay that we've made and put it into our DPS publication in another movie.